Television highlights of the news of yesteryear. It's September 11th, 1937, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in first year of his second term as president, visits Hudson River State Hospital on Nurses' Graduation Day and tells this story.
I remember way up at St. Lawrence, near Ogdensburg, I was driving through the grounds with the superintendent in an open car just like this one. And as we drove through the grounds, there was a very nice-looking old gentleman who was mowing the grass. And as we approached the governor of the state and the superintendent, he put down his mowing machine and stood at the edge of the road. And as we went by, took off his cap most politely and put it back on his head. My family were in the car behind. And after we got about 50 feet past him, I heard the family roaring with laughter. I couldn't do anything about it, so when we got back to the superintendent's house, I asked them what the joke was, and they told me that the old gentleman, as soon as I got safely past, had put his cap back on his head and put his thumb up to his nose. So I told the superintendent I didn't think there was anything the matter with him and he ought to be sent home.
Bank for bathers. From looks of bathing suits, this is early in the 1920s. And near Wilson Avenue Beach, Chicago, here's a bank which provides safety deposit vaults for bathers. No, it's not Windy City heat forcing these people to walk around in beach attire. They're going swimming. And since bathing suits didn't have pockets, even in the early 20s, bathers bank their valuables. And who knows, maybe some of these aquatic customers even float alone. War called on account of peace. It's 21st of July, 1922, and in Washington, D.C., delegates from both Peru and Chile listen intently and hopefully as America's Secretary of State, Charles Evan Hughes, announces that agreement has been reached to negotiate boundary dispute, which has meant war between those two South American nations. Says Hughes, it's big step toward lasting peace in South America and good example for disputing nations round the world. 20 years later, Peru and Chile were still at peace, while history wrote World War, Chapter 2. New Jersey's new jurors. It's 1920, and in Orange, New Jersey, here are first women to serve on jury to try a court case. First chosen is Mrs. Everett Colby. Recently granted voting rights, women will see that trial is no error. Here's famed pianist Joseph Hoffman with his wife and family back in 1922. Hoffman first came to America in 1887 when he was just 11 years old. After a few years in retirement, he returned to concert stage. In 1926, became director of Curtis Institute in Philadelphia. Here on visit to America in 1921 is the fabulous Princess Fatimah with her 3 sons. Cousin of Emir of Afghanistan, the princess wears family diamond worth $125,000 and called Light of the Sea, Princess Fatimah. On board ship in 1926, here are none other than Mr. and Mrs. Paul Whiteman. Whiteman, better known as Pops, and still better known as the King of Jazz, has just become the author of jazz as well. Year after these films were made, Whiteman made musical history playing George Gershwin's experiment in modern music entitled Rhapsody in Blue. Tanker takes the count. It's 30th of December, 1932, and in wind-lashed, rock-bound waters off coast of Carolinas, tanker Doris Kelloff is aflame. En route from Texas oil port to Philadelphia, tanker and her precious cargo are a total loss. And in Graveyard of Atlantic, the ships are moving over to make room for one more. But captain and crew of 33 are safe and soon sailing once again.
Arms of the law. It's 1922, and in Chicago, Illinois, Windy City patrolmen get a change of gear. With ranking officer inspecting members of his precinct, cops salute arrival of regalia that will not only make them look better, but will give them a better chance to preserve law and order. With old uniform, pistols were under coats. Now, Persuader is on outside, where it'll do more good and do it quicker.
Paratroopers trial. Sergeant Erwin Nichols gets his way at last. It's 1932, and U.S. Army and Air Force have agreed to let Nichols demonstrate his plan to drop men and fighting equipment behind enemy lines after carrying them to battle areas by air. It's something brand new in science of war, and test is being keenly watched by observers. There's one tragic death in midst of maneuvers. One soldier succumbs to sudden heart attack. His name, Sergeant Erwin Nichols. But even without creator of experiment, the plan is carried out. 10, 11, and 12 years later, fighting men of every nation filled the air as they sank to battle stations. But this is history's first appearance of the silk-hitting soldier who became the high-booted, knife-wielding paratrooper of World War II and won smash victories in Italy, France, and Germany, and the jungles of Pacific Islands. Everywhere they dropped and dug in to undo the enemy. After the men, down came the guns. Test is big success, though Sergeant Nichols did not live to see his idea help win a war.
Doings of hairdos in 1932. This is hairstyling that softens facial contours. For the woman with small features, here's what they recommended and wore in those glorious days. Young matrons wore their hair like this. And recommended for the mother who wishes to regain her youthful look, hair experts of the early 30s insisted on preserving the natural hairline. It accentuated that girlish look they claimed. Well, maybe it did at that. So far, there's been no Veronica Lake to come along and blind all American women in one eye. For evening wear in the speakeasy days, it was hair that was soft and wavy at the sides, but tied securely in the back. There was a definite Spanish influence in some hairstylings, too. And here's the photographic evidence in case you don't remember. Overall, the trend in the early 30s was to naturalness in the doings of hairdos.
Pride of polo. Here's the immortal Tommy Hitchcock. And here's American teammate Devereux Milburn, plus hard-riding #1 man, J. Watson Webb. And this is Malcom Stevenson. 4 famed poloists in white shirts ride hard and play harder because it's 1927, and Americans are battling British in international polo match at Westbury, Long Island. It's fast action from start to finish with 8 of world's greatest polo players riding best polo ponies money can buy. Getting off the 3-goal lead in first chukker, then adding another in second frame, Americans get a tough afternoon of polo as the Britons come back with a rush of 2 fast goals in chukker number 4. But our side wins. And here's Cup, Hitchcock and Company won and brought back to America with stunning 8-5 victory over the stick swingers from England. It was that fast start that gave the Americans victory at the finish. Donald Budge and brother. Here in 1937 are Lloyd Budge, who taught this brother Don to play pretty good tennis.
Well, Don, it's good to see you down here again. You've come a long way since I started you out in this game.
Well, thank you very much, Lloyd. It's nice to see you. And although I've won the French, English, American, and Wimbledon championships, I don't think my list of titles are complete until I take the family championship away from you today.
All right, how about a little game for it?
Right.
So the battle of the brothers is off, with both Lloyd and Don, but definitely on their game. And here's Lloyd returning one of those point-winning drives of brother Don. And here's a spectator who's going to have a stiff neck tomorrow. Don's powerful backstroke returns a drive by Lloyd and looks from here as if Lloyd wishes he'd been not quite so good a teacher. Because pupil Don wins point, game, set, and natch the match. After the battle...
Well, Don, you're family champion.
Well, Lloyd, I was lucky, and I must say it's the biggest thrill I've had in tennis up to date. You're the hardest opponent I've ever played against.
Thanks, kid.